Next, we have a special face for you, Max Montrose. Ooh, ooh. He's an authoritative voice for the cannabis industry with over 8 years of experience as an educational advisor to government, business, and public sectors, specializing in cannabis safety, education, and awareness. Max is the author of the National Cannabis Industry Textbook, which has been reviewed and approved by industry-leading lawyers, doctors, and scientists. He's the founder of the Trichome Institute, providing standardized cannabis trainings for employees and producing educational tools and learning manuals for all types of cannabis consumers. Max has also developed the sommelier approach to dissecting cannabis variety types called interpenning. Please give a big round of applause and thank you to Max Montrose.
Hello, everybody. I'm excited to do this lecture because this will be pretty controversial, and I usually don't do these types of lectures. I'm generally more scientific, but we're going to go over some science today that should fascinate you. Yeah. Thanks, brother. And thank you, Daniel, for putting this on and medicinal mindfulness and being a warrior, man. This war that we're fighting is not easy, and it's something that we take pretty seriously. It's something that I take very seriously. So who am I? My name is Max Montrose. I'm a pretty well-known advocate for cannabis around, I guess, Colorado and the US. I've been fighting cannabis legislation for years. That's me and Chris Romer fighting about 1284 in 2010. I've been leading massive protests on cannabis since before I could grow facial hair, and running around town with ganja plants in my backpack, even though it was illegal. And I've worked as a head grower for many facilities. I was a head grower for the world's largest marijuana chocolate factory. This is me teaching the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment on dabbing and how dabbing affects the CB1 receptor. And I have some pretty interesting information on dabbing, and any of those of you out there who are dabbers, you should stop. Unless you're dabbing the right way. And to learn the difference between the two, you should come to some of my classes. I've been teaching cannabis for 8 years in Colorado, but I've been in the biz way longer than that, since before it was legal, and I'm proud of it. So what do? I'm the author of the National Cannabis Industry Textbook Series. I've got one of my textbooks here with me today, actually two of them. And I'm also the author of Interpening, which is the sommeliership to cannabis. I teach people how to see and smell the difference between cannabis variety types, and also detect negative qualities within cannabis. It's a pretty dynamic program, and I might talk a little bit about it later. This is what some of the class looks like. It's all hands-on cannabis training. I also do phenotype analysis and cannabis quality control for this some of the largest wholesalers in the state. I'm also doing some phenotyping for some of the PTSD programs for the certified cannabis strains that we're working with. Thanks, dude. Thanks, brother. Appreciate that. And this is called tagging. You'll see this a little bit more. This is going to be the wine spectating score of cannabis that you'll see around town coming up in the next few months. So my class is my responsible vendor course. My textbook is currently the only textbook in the world that teaches people how to sell federally illegal drugs that is sanctioned and approved by two governments, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment and the Marijuana Enforcement Division. I teach that online as well as in person, as well as bud tender education, interpening level 1, 2, and 3 has to be an invite. I design educational tools. Things like the loop, where I teach people how to see and smell cannabis variety types, as well as acceptable qualities of cannabis, unacceptable qualities of cannabis, how the smells work, the terpene ratios. Yeah, and I designed this weed wheel a long time ago, so you know, all the strain names that are made up that really don't help people, you can forget those. Just use science to see and smell how cannabis affects you, because the science is very easily detectable. If you come to my courses, it's a 3-hour lecture on just cannabis flower alone, and you will learn how to see and smell the differences by the end of the class. Yeah, so I do a lot of different things. I do lectures around the world from Jamaica to Israel. Right after this, I'm flying to Boston, where I'll be at Harvard Medical hanging out with Raphael Mechoulam, the guy that discovered THC in 1964. And I'm actually working on strain certification projects where we're correlating the DNA of humans with the DNA of cannabis and correlating our endocannabinoid system with the cannabinoids that they produce. And I do a lot of standard operating procedures for the industry and some consulting. So if you want to... you can follow the crazy madness that I'm up to, trichomeinstitute.com. I hate when businesses email me a once-a-month email letter, so I make sure mine are entertaining. So I put a dorky little video of me in there teaching you something scientific about cannabis or some of our articles and other things. We'll be out in Rolling Stone magazine this month and the national and international THC magazine release, which I have on me. So what is the law on cannabis? As I'm sure you all know, it's a Schedule 1. What's a Schedule 1? So Schedule 1 drugs, they're drugs that are the most dangerous. They will make you the most addicted, have the highest potential for overdose, abuse, and they have no medical value. And I know you guys know this, but we're going to dive really deep into a bunch of stuff that you don't know. By the way, I asked my doctor once, I was like, hey dude, why is cocaine and crystal meth a Schedule 2 if Schedule 2s provide medical benefit? Just out of curiosity. And cocaine can be used as a topical anesthetic, although it's not. And meth is in a lot of children's medication today. In fact, 15% of all males in the United States have been prescribed meth-based pills at one point or another. I have myself. They come up with really creative names like Adderall, which really means amphetamine salt, and Ritalin, which is methylphenidate. And that's so that your kids, it doesn't medicate a debilitating condition. It's simply scholastic performance enhancement. It's what we don't allow our football stars to do. So, well, we let our kiddos do it. So, is cannabis a medicine? I know we all know this, it's a big no duh, but what's really interesting is, I mean, damn near half the country is so serious about cannabis being a medicine that they just kind of gave the middle finger to Papa Bear, who's, you know, the government above them, and is like, I don't know, dude, this actually is medical, you know? And I wish I had time today to teach you all about medical marijuana. I don't, because I have a lot of other things to cover, but just know that I do teach a lot on medical cannabis, how it works, the differences between the cannabinoid arrangements and the terpenes and all of that good stuff. But something that you do need to know in terms of how cannabis works, I will tell you very briefly, since unfortunately not a lot of people know this, and especially doctors and physicians have never been trained on the endocannabinoid system. And that's because doctors aren't trained on human health. They're trained on medicine. And so what the endocannabinoid system is believe it or not, you and I are all producing cannabinoids right now as we speak, and just like our cannabis plants are. I think the most amazing cannabinoid, we'll all agree, is CBD, but a lot of people don't know that humans produce CBD, specifically women in their breast milk. It's endogenous cannabidiol, and that's what fed us all, and that's what grows your tissue, your skin, your bones. It actually regulates your hunger. That's why you get the munchies. It regulates your temperature. We all have a little man inside of us right now hanging onto the thermostat, making sure it's right at that point. That's your endocannabinoid system. It also regulates your pain and absolutely everything else in your body. It is the complete neurotransmitter system from your CB1 receptor in your brain to your CB2 receptors all over your entire body. And the cannabis plant just so happens to grow a spectrum of these cannabinoids, also terpenes. And cannabinoids have nothing to do with cannabis variation and difference with indica and sativa. It's the terpenes. But if you go to my website, you can see galleries of my little dorky videos. I've got a good one where I teach you what trichomes are and how they work and how many different kinds of them there are and why they exist. But it's the trichomes, those white little sparkly things on cannabis, that make you feel what you feel. And these would be terpenes and cannabinoids. But I'm not going to get too deep into medicine today. Does the U.S. federal government believe cannabis is a medicine? Yes. Well, but they say that it's not. you know? Well, I mean, there's so many, I mean, right now, it's still a Schedule I drug because it provides no medical benefit. But the answer is yes. So if you go to drugabuse.gov, that's our government. What is the marijuana plant? What are cannabinoids? There's 100 different kinds of them. They're accurate. What is CBD? You know, it treats childhood epilepsy disorders. How might cannabis be useful as a medicine? You know, interest in THC and CBD, increase appetite, reduce nausea. I mean, this is just the government being like, hey, you know, it might be good for autoimmune diseases, HIV, multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's. I mean, everything. This is your government saying, here's how aware we are that cannabis is medical. We're completely aware. Oh, I don't know it's going to do that every time. That'd be bad. Has anybody in here heard that cannabis kills cancer? Yeah? It's a good group of people. Who says cannabis kills cancer? All of us crazy, weird hippies in a psychedelic shine thing in a dark room? I think we're the only ones who are saying that cannabis kills cancer. Except our federal government. Cancer.gov. I'm showing you government websites. These aren't crazy conspiracy websites. The history of medical use of cannabis, 3,000 years. And in our country, 19th century. They admit it. It's pretty amazing. Have any preclinical trials been done on cannabis or cannabinoids? Studies in rats and mice have shown cannabinoids inhibit tumor growth, causing cell death. A study in mice shows cannabinoids protect against inflammation. Delta-9 THC, liver cancer, cells showed to damage or kill the cancer cells. This is your federal government telling you that cannabis kills cancer cells. It's still a Schedule I drug because it provides no medical benefit. Just so we're clear. This is going to be the theme of all of this, just to let you know. So how far does their awareness go? What did the government website say about knowing cannabis has been a medicine for 3,000 years? They're totally aware. You'd be crazy to think that they're not. When did the US government first realize cannabis is a medicine? 1851. It was in the United States Pharmacopoeia, the third ever. It has been found to cause sleep. Dad, you need to get on that. To allay spasms and to compose nervous disquietude and to relieve pain. In these respects, it resembles opium. Now here's what's really interesting. Opium's not a Schedule I, it's a Schedule II. And the synthetic version of the plant of opium is also a Schedule II. Vicodin is a Schedule II. Oxycontin is a Schedule II, and the opium from the resin is also a Schedule II. Hold that thought. Why can't you get medical marijuana at a pharmacy? We have 1,000 dispensaries in this state right now. We have more ganja stores than Starbucks and public school combined. It's because you can't access cannabis as a pharmacy. It's because it provides no medical benefit. You can't get medical marijuana at a pharmacy. That's why dispensaries exist, and that's why your doctor can't prescribe you medical marijuana. It has to be a recommendation. So what the hell is dronabinol and Marinol? Well, dronabinol, the active ingredient in Marinol capsules, is synthetic delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol. Delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol is also a naturally occurring component of cannabis sativa L marijuana. That's the molecular structure of phyto tetrahydrocannabinol. That's the molecular structure of synthetic tetrahydrocannabinol. They're the exact same. This version provides no medical benefit. It's a Schedule 1. This version, their version, does provide a medical benefit. July 2nd, 1999. Rescheduling of the Food and Drug Administration's approved product containing synthetic dronabinol, D9-trans tetrahydrocannabinol, in sesame oil and encapsulated in soft gelatin capsules from Schedule 2 to Schedule 3. That means our government recognizes not only is cannabis a medicine, but it's less harmful than crystal meth and cocaine. Their version, the one that they own, not the one you can grow in your backyard. Oh yeah, we don't have to go to that site. You know I'm not lying to you. Well, actually, this is all just a lie. Nothing I'm telling you is true. Oh yeah, this is important stuff. Okay, dronabinol, Marinol. Okay, so let's analyze something really important. Daniel, pay attention. A naturally occurring component of cannabis, sativa L. 21 U.S.C. 802.16. This is the current federal law today. The term marijuana means all parts of the plant Cannabis sativa L. Whether grown or not, the seeds thereof, the resin extracted from any part of such plant, and every compound, manufactured, salt derivative, mixture, or preparation of such plant, its seeds or resin. So what does the word marijuana mean? It means lazy colored smoking people. The reason why our federal government refuses to put the J in there and why the H is highlighted is because it's a brown word that comes from the South. We would never use a J for a H sounding letter. We're Americans. Even though they are too, we're like the Americans. So what is cannabis? What is sativa L? If you come to my interpreting classes, we'll talk about ruderalis. It's really fascinating, but we're not going to get there today. Sativa and indica, this is what the plant structures look like, right, everybody? Well, maybe. We go really deep into cannabis variety types in my courses, so if you guys are really geeking out about it, come take an interpreting class. I have them once a month in Denver. So this is a really dense textbook on cannabis taxonomy. Like really dense. No joke. And if you flip to this page, I know it's hard to see, page 324, this is the current of what we know in terms of cannabis, botany, and evolution today. Cannabis actually comes from the most northern hemisphere of the world and was started as pituitive, primordial, ancestral ruderalis, and as it followed down south from humans and nature, it turned into indica and sativa. So the gentleman who wrote this book is Rob Clark. I got to hang out with him last weekend. Super cool dude. And so this is currently what cannabis is today in terms of DNA and taxonomy. So we have broadleaf drug, BLD. It's an indica species, and its subspecies is Afghanica. It's got a broadleaf. It's a drug. Broadleaf hemp cultivar, BLH. Indica species, subspecies chinensis. It's got a broadleaf. It's a hemp plant. Narrow leaf drug cultivar, NLD, species, indica. Subspecies, indica. Thin leaf, drug. Narrow leaf hemp, NLH, European hemp. Sativa, subspecies, sativa. Hemp. there's no such thing as a sativa plant that produces a drug. Well, that's not true. Sativa does produce CBD, but not THC. All sativa variety types, genomically, chemotype, and phenotypically, are hemp plants. Do you guys get that? That means everything you've always been told, like when you go to the dispensary and they're like, this is a sativa and that's an indica. In reality, it's like, here's an indica and here's an indica. This one had thin leaves, that one had broad leaves. This one makes you high and that one makes you stoned. But they're both indica. Just to let you know. I know that's rough. I know it's rough because I helped the scientists build this science. This is me taking seeds, leaf shape, measurements of the entire plant, the cola structures, and the DNA for the Cannabis Genomic Research Initiative here at Boulder CU. I've got a picture with me and the scientists holding the DEA license that allows them to study this, even though the school has federal funding. What has been the impact of cannabis sativa L prohibition? It's pretty substantial. In the most recent years, it's damn near 1 million people a year for something that's been wrongfully labeled and completely misunderstood. Or has it been misunderstood? What if the taxonomy is true? Is it possible there is no such plant called sativa that is a drug? And by drug, I mean THC, psychoactivity. What would that mean for all those who have lost decades of their lives trapped in a cage based on a false understanding? How false was this understanding? I argue there never was a misunderstanding. They have always known the truth about cannabis. They chose a different way of life on behalf of society based on their irrational fears and lies. And it makes a lot of money too. We'll get into that. March 24th, this was just 2 weeks ago. One of Richard Nixon's advisors and key figure to Watergate scandal said the war on drugs was created as a political tool to fight blacks and hippies. The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-left and the black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities, we could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and more. This was a plan. And these are the top guys who really don't understand what happens on the streets, so they said, you know, let's associate the blacks with heroin, but once they got smart about it, they actually did it with crack cocaine. And if you haven't ever researched the CIA learning how to make crack and teaching it to Bloods and Crips in South Central LA, check out that documentary. They actually interview the CIA agents who went out and did that, and the gangsters who actually were taught by the CIA that spread all of crack making in LA to specifically imprison black people and have them kill each other. So how successful were they at this crazy plan? They were super successful. Super successful. So a lot of people don't know about the Schaefer Commission. It's the commission that was launched by the federal government to research cannabis before the Controlled Substance Act. And it was the federal government, it's still to this day, the most comprehensive review of marijuana ever conducted by the federal government. And because this is being videoed and they might not be able to read it, I'm just going to go through this. The Schaefer Commission, officially known as the National Commission on Marijuana and Drug Abuse, spelled with an H, took its job seriously. They launched 50 research projects, polled the public and members of the criminal justice community, and took thousands of pages of testimony. Their work is still the most comprehensive review of marijuana ever conducted by the federal government. After reviewing all of the evidence, these drug warriors were forced to come to a different conclusion than they had first expected. Rather than harshly condemning marijuana, they started talking about legalization. When Nixon heard of such talk, he quickly denounced the commission months before it issued its report. It concluded marijuana's relative potential for harm to the vast majority of individual users and its impact on society does not justify a social policy designed to seek out and firmly punish those who use it. The most important recommendation of the commission was that the decriminalization of possession or non-profit transfer of marijuana. Decriminalization meant these would be no punishments, criminal or civil, under the state or federal law. So Nixon's private comments about marijuana, which you can listen to, you can actually hear him say this if you go to this website that's at the bottom, showed he was misinformation and prejudice. He believed marijuana led to hard drugs despite the evidence to the contrary. He saw marijuana as tied to radical demonstrators. He believed that the Jews, especially Jewish psychiatrists, were behind advocacy for legalization. Well, he was right about something. I'm Jewish. And so is the guy I'm going to see tomorrow, Raphael Meshulam, who discovered THC, and there's a lot of us in the biz. So he also saw marijuana as part of the culture war that was destroying the United States and claimed that the communists were using it as a weapon. His approach to drug education was just simplistic: enforce the law, you've got to scare them. Nixon chose to extinguish the science and evidence about cannabis when constructing law for our society. This is the second time in our country's history this has happened. Have you ever heard of the LaGuardia reports? Anybody? Yeah? Cool, good. Not a lot of people have. But after 1937 and Reefer Madness, this is the conclusion that was presented to the federal government. The consensus among marijuana smokers is that the use of the drug creates a definite feeling of adequacy. Well, we don't want that in this country. The practice of smoking marijuana does not lead to addiction in the medical sense of the word. The sale and distribution of marijuana is not under the control of any single organized group. I'm going to hold back. The use of marijuana does not lead to morphine or heroin or cocaine addiction, and no effort is made to create a market for these narcotics by stimulating the practice of marijuana smoking. Marijuana is not the determining factor in the commission of major crimes. Marijuana smoking is not widespread among school children. Juvenile delinquency is not associated with the practice of smoking marijuana. The publicity concerning the catastrophic effects of marijuana smoking in New York City is unfounded. So LaGuardia reports is from the mayor of New York, who is like, wait, this whole 1937 Tax Act and all of Reefer Madness, like, none of this is true. And our government knew it. They just said, nah. So I'm actually not going to talk about Reefer Madness, because everyone in this room knows pretty much everything about it. But do you know the story behind the scenes? And I don't think a lot of people do. Racism was a tool. It wasn't the cause or the reason. And neither was people getting high, because we know that all of those reports were lies, right? So what was the reason? Federalism, cancer. How about gasoline? How about the entire auto industry? Way more than paper, although William Randolph Hearst, who owned all of the paper mills, just about all the paper mills in the United States, lost over 800,000 acres of land to a hemp grower named Pacho Villa, a Mexican. By the way, you know, the song La Cucaracha, es marihuana es fumar, all you need to be a cockroach is to smoke a little marijuana. It's a Mexican thing. So, does anybody here know about Andrew Mellon? Of Carnegie Mellon. He was the Secretary of State in the United States in the 1930s, maybe the 20s also. Well, he owned Texas Oil, Texaco. And one of his good buddies, Rockefellers, also owned oil. So the three richest men on planet Earth, you know, the Rockefellers and Mellon and Henry Ford, were all gaining speed from the Industrial Revolution, especially with the auto boom. But there was a turning point when they were sitting in a room together, kind of deciding how the lay of the land is going to go and work out. The Industrial Revolution had a choice. We can go complete machine and chemical, or we can be 100% organic, because we have all the technology we could ever need for renewable energy resources, even back in the 30s. And this is about profit. And you can't profit as heavily from something you can make yourself or renew. You can profit from something the rarer it becomes. They knew that gasoline, wood, paper, plastics, everything was the enemy. The 1% secret war was about money, power, and the turning point of which direction the Industrial Revolution would go. The war was truly against renewable energy and medicine. The goal, eliminate hemp, cannabis sativa L. It's what's still federally illegal. Every person who's been arrested for cannabis has been arrested for indica. And what's funny is, do you know how many like murderers get off trial because one of the words in the court case like didn't match? What's that called again? Like when you, is there a word for that? You know what I'm talking about? Like people who kill people get away with stuff because of a technicality. What about this technicality? What does that mean? Why? I love that picture.
Was built to run on hemp gasoline, and the car itself was constructed from hemp. On its largest date, Ford was photographed amongst hemp fields. The car, grown from the soil, had hemp plastic panels whose impact strength was 10 times stronger than steel. Henry Ford ran 40,000 vehicles on hemp fuel from only 10,000 acres. The emissions are what you exhale, and the next year's crop reconverts it back into oxygen. That's a natural cycle fuel. We think that our ethanol and biofuels and flex fuel systems are all the cutting edge, but biofuel development, of course, is nothing new. Way back in the 1930s, Henry Ford was hard at work in the alternative fuel sector, and in 1941, he constructed a hemp-fueled and hemp-bodied prototype car. The plastic body panels were composed of 70% cellulose fibers, including industrial strength, mixed with a resin binder, and apparently they were pretty sturdy. A guy beats on the trunk with an axe and it fails to leave a mark. Industrial hemp won't make you high. It has no THC in it, but its association with marijuana has historically been a major legal stumbling block. There's some of you that think I'm full of shit, but the actual footage of 1941 should be proof enough for you.
Amongst the thousands of products made from hemp, one of the most extraordinary is Henry Ford's plastic car. Built in 1941, it contained cellulose fibers derived from hemp, sisal, and wheat straw. The plastic was lighter than steel, yet could withstand 10 times the impact without denting.
Biodegradable cars that ran on renewable energy that doesn't produce pollution. Oh, good call. So, I won't play this one for you now, but if you watch Canadian Cannabis Car, the Canadians are already building biodegradable cars that run on renewable energy and concrete and insulation and wood and houses. You can build entire villages on cannabis, and the Chinese did. That's why their empire was so huge. Every ship, everything. In fact, every sail. Who was the guy that found America? What's his name? No, the guy who sailed real far from, Europe. Columbus? Yeah, that guy. So the sails, with all that, canvas. The word canvas comes from Old English word canevas, which is what it's produced from, cannabis. I wanted to answer that religion question. Man. Maybe I will later. So the question is why? It's like, well, farming 6% of the continental US acreage with biomass crops would provide all of America's energy needs. Hemp is Earth's #1 biomass resource. It is capable of producing 10 tons per acre in 4 months. Biomass can be converted to methane, methanol, or gasoline at a cost comparable to petroleum. And hemp is much better for the environment. Hemp can produce 10 times more methanol than corn. Hemp fuel burns clean. Petroleum causes acid rain due to sulfur pollution. The use of hemp fuel does not contribute to global warming. Would we have global warming today if in 1937 this didn't happen? Every single Happy Meal would be biodegradable. Like McDonald's trash on the ground, you wouldn't like get freaked out from it. You'd be like, oh, it's cool, it's just gonna go back to the earth. That whole car lot full of metal cars, all of your trash, everything. There's no such thing as trash. We're all one, and the cannabis plant is the mother of it all. It's in the Bible. Food. Hemp seed can be pressed into a nutritious oil, which contains the highest amount of fatty acids in the plant kingdom. Essential oils are responsible for our immune system's response and clear to blah, blah, blah. Hemp seed has the most, all of the essential fatty acids and essential omegas that a human body needs. Have you even heard of like the Roman military survived walking hundreds of miles without hunting or building base camps or growing food by eating nothing but hemp seed and water? Fiber. Hemp is the oldest cultivated fiber plant in the world. Low THC fiber hemp varieties developed by the French and others have been available for over 20 years, more like over 15,000, but it is impossible to get high from fiber hemp. Over 600,000 acres of hemp is grown worldwide with no drug misuse problem. Industry. Almost any product that can be made from wood, cotton, or petroleum, including plastics, can be made from hemp. There are more than 25,000 known uses for hemp. Medicine. Deaths from marijuana, 0. It's not possible to overdose on the thing that builds your brain in the first place. You know how they taught us that cannabis kills brain cells? It's actually a neurological protectant. They have patents on it. I'll show you that. Deaths from aspirin each year, 180 to 1,000. Could be your last headache. Seems like a pretty important plant. Sativa hemp. Cannabis sativa L. So we'll do a short recap. There are thousands of years worth of global evidence that cannabis is the most important medicine to human beings that exists. Our federal government says it kills cancer cells. Just one state away, cannabis is illegal, and just a few grams can put you in jail for a lifetime. Depends what a few grams is and which weird conservative state you horribly fell into. Only cannabis sativa L is federally illegal in the United States, and it does not produce a psychoactive drug. Only cannabis indica produces psychoactive THC. It was a common pharmaceutical pre-1937. It's in like a lot of children's cough suppressants. If you guys actually look at some of the pharmacies in the United States, lots of opium, lots of cocaine. I collect prescriptions of opium and cocaine and whiskey from the US from the 20s and 30s. So I've got a lot of them. Only cannabis indica produces yep. Government, so the government doesn't respect indica. Cannabis is scheduled as one of the most illegal and dangerous substances because it provides no medical benefit. Yet our federal government, the FDA and DEA, claim cannabis has enough medical benefit to prescribe it as a medicine from doctors through pharmacies for over 25 years, Marinol. It is so medically beneficial that the US Department of Health and Human Services has patented its benefits. United States patent 6,630,507. This is the abstract. The cannabinoids are found to have particular application as neuroprotectants. That's not what they said in, what's that called, DARE. For example, in limiting neurological damage following ischemic insults, such as stroke or trauma, or in the treatment of neurodegenerative diseases, such as Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, and HIV, dementia. Non-psychoactive cannabinoids, such as cannabidiol, are particularly advantageous to the use because they avoid toxicity that is encountered with psychoactive cannabinoids at high doses, useful in the method of the present invention. Who invented cannabinoids? Wasn't God. It was Hampson, Aiden, and Alex Rod, Julius Rockefeller. I mean, it might be Rockefeller. Grimald. These guys invented it. And the United States of America, represented by the Department of Health and Human Services, owns it. February 2nd, 2001. For 15 years. So almost 1 million people a year get arrested because it provides no medical benefit. And this is the Department of Health and Human Services. Like, damn, this shit is so medically beneficial. If we don't own it quick, we're gonna lose control. CBD is widely known and accepted as a real miracle medicine for just about everything. Seriously. I could do a 5.5-hour lecture on just CBD. Maybe I will. Potentially the cure for cancer. The FDA is curbing people from selling it as a medicine. The legislation has already gone down. And just to let you know, all medical marijuana will be against the law in the United States in just 3 to 7 years. We can talk about that later if you want. So CBD businesses such as Charlotte's Web started selling CBD as a supplement instead. Can products that contain cannabidiol be sold as dietary supplements? No. This is the FDA. They just posted this the other day. Any way you want to go about it, they're going to make it not happen. Do not be jaded by our Colorado bubble. I was just smoking weed with some of you just like right out back, right before I got up on stage. Crazy, right? I can do a whole presentation in front of a room full of people stoned. No, it's just crazy that the struggle is still very real. I got that when I was in Jamaica a month ago, hanging with the Rastas in the jungle. The struggle is still very real, and it is. It's scary. Felonies for thoughts? Yeah. The House Judiciary Committee passed a bill in 2011 that would make it a federal crime for U.S. residents to discuss or plan activities on foreign soil if carried out in the U.S. would violate the Controlled Substance Act, even if the planned activities are legal in the countries they were carried out in. Hey, Daniel, you want to take a trip of medicinal mindfulness to Peru to go do ayahuasca? And then let's go to Ecuador and do San Pedro? And then let's eat the reindeer piss after they eat the Amanita muscaria mushrooms with the shamans in Russia. That's 3 felonies right there. For talking about it. For thinking. There's a felony right now for thinking about breaking the law that would be illegal here, even if you did it somewhere else where it's legal. That shit's real. It's in effect right now. That really was 3 felonies I just broke. I don't know about that, no. This is real and allows prosecutors to bring conspiracy charges against anyone who discusses, plans, or advises someone else to engage in any activity that violates the CSA. Plans, discusses, felonies for thinking. How about we bring felony conspiracy charges on the heads of the DEA, FDA, and USD Department of Health and Human Services for knowing indefinitely that cannabis is a medicine, it is safe, and it does not cause crime. Based on their blatant and published lies, I showed them to you today. They're live on the internet. You can go see them for yourselves. They strip us of our families. They take our precious lives away by caging us and prevent us from healing each other. I tried really hard to save my mom from her cancer with CBD. And the bottle is still full. Because she was scared to take it, And at first they said she wasn't allowed to take it because it was on chemotherapy, even though the federal government's website says CBD has now been proven to help chemotherapy by continuing to destroy the bad cells and protect the good ones. The drug war is a war about power against people. They're not protecting us. They are literally hunting us down. They're doing this to keep their power and to keep these global warming business tycoons afloat. And it's not really even the government. We all know that they're puppets. It's the people who pay them. Cannabis threatens big tobacco, alcohol, oil, pharmaceuticals, food, infrastructure, paper, plastics, wood, even electricity. Tesla's out here in Colorado working with hemp because it even transmits electricity. And even our federal government uses hemp plastic in our F-22 fighter jets. There's no resin that's more durable. It doesn't dent, just like the cars. Law enforcement officers made just over 700,000 arrests on marijuana-related charges in 2014. This is one person every 51 seconds. There have been more people arrested since the beginning of my speech for a drug, cannabis sativa L. That's the most harmful drug in the world that provides no medical benefit. That's more people than are in this room right now. Since I started talking, they're in handcuffs right now. The state of cannabis today, you're still being lied to. So is there any hope?
Today, under the Federal Controlled Substance Act, marijuana is listed as a Schedule I drug alongside of heroin. I've introduced legislation to take marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act.
That was Bernie Sanders earlier today at a rally in New York City talking marijuana legalization after the DEA announced this week it will reconsider categorizing marijuana under federal law in the coming months. Currently categorized as a Schedule I drug, the U.S. government defines marijuana as one of the most dangerous drugs with no accepted medical use, along with drugs such as heroin and LSD.
This is me with Harry Anslinger's great niece at the very first legal hemp harvest in our country's history in 80 years. She's a level 2 interpreter. And that's Jason Love and I. He helped write some of the federal hemp legislation. A lot of people, are really thankful for Amendment 64 because it really is the thing that helped legalize, but nobody knows who did this. And I think it's really important to pay homage to the people in the behind the scenes who work really, really hard. You have no idea what these people do and how hard they're working right now. It's Steve Fox and Brian Vicente who legislated Amendment 64. They legalized for us. So did Christian Cederberg, but he was passed out in the house still during the picture. So I'm still fighting really hard. I've been fighting this fight since like early high school, middle school, and I hope that you'll help me fight until this problem is over globally, not just in our state. So thank you.